Today we have Viet from Kei Concepts with us. Viet's been on the podcast before, and we attended, a few of my friends and I attended a Kei Concepts, what was called the Hello World event
Hmm.
a few weeks ago. And congratulations, it was a beautiful event.
Thank
And
you.
I can't help but think about the enormous amount of energy that you've put into the planning of it. It felt like a Berkshire Hathaway or Apple annual gathering.
Yeah.
And it had that sense of importance and urgency. But I kept thinking about how much effort and energy you put into it as a founder, as a visionary. But the young people today and the people sort of, it doesn't have to be young. I feel like it's all over the workforce. I feel like there's a pullback in motivation and a pullback in the idea of working a 9 to 5. Do you find that to be a challenge for your work?
Well, it's always been a challenge, I think. But I think the framing of it. So let's change the framing a little bit too. And I hear this a lot about Gen Z is not made the way that we made, or
Yeah.
millennials or late millennials are not the same ways that the boomers, and rightfully so, because each generation is very different. And yeah, so like you said, the lack of motivations and not really subscribing to 9 to 5 really is not about who they are really. I think it's the society that they grew up in. And to be completely honest, I think most people forgot, at this point that we just went through once in a century pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So obviously behavior is going to change. Like, and then right after that, if you can see the job market lately, it didn't really change, or it actually went up. So the job market is really strong. That indicates that the economy is probably going to be soft landing, I would say.
Yeah.
And so what that really means is, the job market is really providing a lot of options. So if you're a Gen Z, if you're, highly intelligent, if you're late millennials and you now have a lot of different options, why would you even subscribe to the 9 to 5?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? So I think that the framing of it is, from our standpoint, like we're early millennials, or, late boomers would be, have to really understand that, yes, they're not the same way, but maybe they've been dealt with a really bad hand, or they just have a lot more options. And so it's always going to be a challenge. Work, as we know it, has already changed. And I would point this to another series. I don't know if you've ever watched it. It's called The Bear.
Yeah.
Season two
Love
is a
it there.
drop.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's
But
on.
it really asks the question of, why work in a restaurant industry anyway? Like, if the industry is so broken, why work in it, right? So there's
Yeah.
a lot of different dynamic in it. It's really pointing it out, and so it also answer a lot of the things that you just asked about, which is, work has changed, and how or why does the younger generations are lacking motivations, and it answers a lot of that,
Yeah.
and it's really because they've been dealt a bad hand, and the economy and the workplace for it has been broken for so long, and now they kind of like that revolutions, that evolution, that revolutions of breaking out of that mold, I
Yeah.
think.
So just to give everybody some sort of reference, the presentation, the Hello World presentation that we sat through was about your restaurant group, which is one of the most brilliant restaurant groups that we have for Vietnamese Americans, I think, in the US. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but you the biggest group, the Vietnamese American biggest restaurant group. And you had a hours long presentation about the future of where you're going with the company, the vision of
Mhm.
where you want to take the company. And it was
Yeah.
elaborately planned, the way you situated every little thing, every little plot that you could think of was put out there for us to really see. Everything from the idea of property acquisition to AI and how AI would benefit the workforce that you are assembling. Now, that seems like it took a long time. And I just wanted to ask you the process of how did you put that all that together?
Yeah, so that was a very good question. Nobody asked this question, so all right. So we took this opportunity to answer it. So I had this vision of Key Concepts right around 2018. So we started our first concept in 2014, which is Soup Noodle Bar, and then we had a Vox Kitchen along the way, and I have a few more other locations and a few other franchises that we do. But I had that eureka moment in around 2018 where we have so many different employees start quitting our company. And so the exits, interview, we always ask them like, okay, well, understanding that you leaving us,
Mm-hmm.
is it the pay? Is it the environment? What is it? And so the most common question is actually not the pay. So it's regardless of how much you pay them, they're not staying. And so for them, it was a learning experience. So they felt like they hit a plateau at a certain point. I mean, what could you learn much in a Vietnamese restaurant or in a pho restaurant? And because we're not a chef-driven group
Yeah.
at that time, so everything was standardized, everything was very, obviously commercialized, so that we could have enough revenues and stability in our growth. And so they felt, they needed to go and learn more. So we start losing. So we train them from the ground up, all the way into like a GM level or general manager level or executive chef level. What is out there? What's more to them? So they have to leave us to go study some more. Well, some came back, but we know that was a common theme. So in 2018, I talked to my partners and I say, we're losing people, right? We're losing a lot of people. Um, what if we create a brand where we're not forcing down their throat on just, the same food every day, repetitive, the 9 to 5, like you said, the boring stuff, but a restaurant where profit is not the goal, but the goal is to curate talent. The goal is to have so after they leave all of our other restaurant, they can go to this restaurant and they can do whatever they want, as long as it makes perfect sense for them to learn more, to explore, and as long as it break even or like a little bit of loss, we're okay. So it was more than an institution for us to curate talent. And so we found a company called Gem Dining. And that was something that we had, you know what? No profit needed.
Wow.
Once you're done, you can go there and you can explore. You can do whatever you want as long as that kind of like, uh, help you stay with our group. And leading that concept, I needed somebody to lead that program because I wasn't there going to be there all the time. I'm still doing my CEO work. I can still cook and do R&D, but only a little bit of time. So my third partner would came on board, which is Edward, and we took him from Tao Group, and so he was leading that program. And during that time, I was feeling okay, this might be a good idea. And so and that was the year that Kira was just born as well, my daughter. And so we felt, hey, if that is the case and we can actually keep all these talents, I think we could become a restaurant group. And so at that time we founded, Key Concept, name it after my daughter, Kira. Um, so that was the whole entire plot of things, right? So we created that ideas to make sure that we can curate talent. And because of that, we create a restaurant group. And so when we created that restaurant group, there was a lot of other options for us to move from. Now, do we want to franchise things? Do we want to go chain? Do we want to go, do all the big groups are doing? And then we pinpointed that, deep down within our heart, the only reason why that we even started doing business here is because of Little Saigon. We came here because of Little Saigon. We really want to make Little Saigon a much better place for me, for Kira to grow up in. And so that changed our whole entire perspective of not just doing just restaurant group per se, but we have finally became something that we now call hospitality solution. So what hospitality solution is no longer just a restaurant group, but anything that relating to food and beverage as a solution. So let's just say we think of restaurant as in like, oh, I want Chinese food today or Japanese food tomorrow, Korean food, the next day. But completely honest to ourselves, the way that we think of food and beverage is behaviors. So not asking of the when and where, but we now asking the who and the what. So if you're looking at like this kind of like bird's eye view down, and we say, okay, well, today you asking yourself, what time am I eating? Where am I eating at, right? So you asking the when and where a lot, but the human behavior is different than that, right? So now we can ask if, Kenneth as a person is a who, what do you need? So who and the what and the why behind it is a lot more important to us. So we change it that way. And so then I would think, okay, when you first wake up, you probably want a cup of coffee or pastry on the way to work. So that felt like maybe you need a Kei coffee house, a coffee solution. And then you go into lunch and you're like, okay, well, I want something quick and easy. I can take a bite and then I can, still work on my days. It sounds like a Maki roll box to me. So that's roll right there. And then right after lunch, you probably want to have a quick hangout, quick snack on the way, to before you go home. That could be another, I would say, a tea concept right there. Or at nighttime, let's just say if you go on celebrations, you probably go to gym because that's more like a fine casual dining. Or you want something that is like, yes, Western, but like half Asian in a sense, but it's still a very nice setting. And Italian food. That sounds like an E9 to me, And so you sometimes want to have people to come to your house and do catering. That sounds like Kei catering to me.
Right.
Sometimes you just want to have something in your pantry that's some brand that you really trust. That sounds like a direct-to-consumer brand to me. What if you want meal prep? That sounds like something that Kei Meal Prep can do for you. So if you really think about it, then the questions now completely change and it moved us from whatever that the rest of the world is doing, we're asking the when and where all the time. And we're looking at a bird's eye view down and change it completely and ask yourself the who, the what, and then put the why behind it. And the why is always be, what if we turn this little Saigon area into the utopia of hospitality solution, the center of the world in innovations in F&B. And so that's where Kei Concepts really is now. And how to communicate that to the rest of the world, we felt that was important for us to put on a keynote to explain all of that. And that was also the reason why that we felt like, as a I have a technology background. So if you feel like it's a startup, it's a tech startup, with a very different concept of F&B and asking completely different set of questions of the why and the what and the who, then that would be completely different for a lot of people. And I felt that was needed to say hello world for the first time. So
That's a great explanation. And as I'm listening to you explain all this, I'm thinking of sort of like the visionaries of the world, like Elon Musk and Bezos. They sort of, when you hear them, it feels like they're like aliens that they just dropped in from like outer space, and they have this like technology, this new way of looking at. I mean, frankly, you have a brand new way of looking at the hospitality world, the F&B world in Little Saigon, in a very Vietnamese enclave of the United States. Where did you really get this ability to kind of step out of the perspective of a regular restaurant owner? Because it sounds like you came from that background, right? At Soup, you sounded like a one restaurant operator. You did really well, and you were noticing an attrition rate that you weren't comfortable with. But in order to go from that point to where you are today, what happened along the way to kind of ensure that you have this bigger ecosystem? Because it sounds like alien technology when I hear it. I'm like, no other Vietnamese in the world. I mean, I might be wrong about Vietnam because I don't know the Vietnam F&B world, but when it comes to the United States, especially Little Saigon is such a big enclave that we have. This is very new. This is alien technology to me. And
Mhm.
so I wonder, is it mentors? Is it your tech background? What exactly is it that gave you this sort of like this bird's eye, this 360 view of humanity as it exists in the food and beverage space?
That's a very deep question, and so let's break it up into two parts, because the first part is, obviously, how did I have this view? And I think that was very early on in my early days, where my dad is not one of the most successful at, I would say. Obviously, now that I can see it back. But one thing that he really gave me was at a very early age, he actually answered a lot of my questions. Like how when you grew up, what was the first question that you asked all the time? You never asked what. You never asked a who, a when, a where, or a how. You always asked why.
Yeah.
That's why, have you ever
Yeah.
seen that one kid that always asks why
Right.
10,000 times? It's
Yeah.
appears the same way. And so, like, parents, sometimes we just get really tired and we just
Yeah.
don't want, and so we stop answering at one point and like, what? Just go back to your room, right? My dad kept answering. He was keep answering, answering, answering. So I could have any question I want, and I can come to him. And it's like, why are we so privileged and people are so poor? And then he was explaining everything about like communism and like
Wow.
capitalism. And I was five.
Wow.
uh, but little did he know or I know that I actually kind of understood it. And so it kind of stuck with me for my whole entire adult life, where I always know when to ask why.
Mm.
And it's really amplified when I started reading that book, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And it just really hit the bullseyes and like, voila. I mean, this is common sense. Like we grew up asking the exactly the same question all the time.
Yeah.
For some reason in the middle, because of society, because of the way that we frame our youth, it really suppressed that, right? So you stop asking why, and now you're asking because you're so scared. Now you're asking when, where, to how, to what, and you know, and then it just really killed innovations. Um, so the second part of that is because when I was in school, um, three things that happened in 2008. I think the economy was really bad. So I felt like, why do I burn 60K a year to go to school for my parents, which right now they were kind of struggling at that point. Rather than I just learn myself, I felt like school was kind of slow for me. So what if I can just read anything I want, learn anything I want? So I decided to drop out. And dropping out, like I don't recommend people dropping out, by the way, like finish your school. Like
Yeah.
that was important. I felt if I would have just stayed, I would have gone way further in life. But I did. I made that. I still think was kind of like a bad decision, but it was good in a sense where it allowed me to learn whatever that I wanted to. So I didn't have that framework. And so it allowed me to read 40, 50, 60 books a year. And I kept that habit for a real long time. I mean, I dropped like the lowest point, still probably going to be like 30 books a year.
Oh.
But I kept up with all of it, right? So, and that gave me the world knowledge in a sense of how to understand world differently to I think most people. Um, and that helped me have that view. And the second part of it is now that I have that view, how do I apply it, right, to whatever that I'm doing? And so I've been struggling asking the ultimate why question was, why do I exist? I know a lot of the other whys, right? But why do I exist? Why am I in this body, have this consciousness here, and have all of these, I would call luck around me? The fact that I'm born not disabled, luck. The fact that, I met someone that supported me, luck. The fact that I was born in a loving family, luck. The fact that I get to be in America, still, I believe, the best country in the world, luck. So yes, people ask me all the time, you got to where you are, is it luck? I'm like, absolutely is luck. Absolutely is luck. What if I was born in a plain of Africa, have nothing on my names, nobody loving me, and an orphan? How would that make me? Right? Obviously, even if I have this consciousness, I wouldn't be able to do anything. So absolutely is luck. So that was the first part of it. And now that I understand that, and I know that I was lucky enough to be in this body and understand all of this and have this knowledge now, I got to find my tool. How do I find my pathway to explain all of these ideas? Um, and so now that I have some sort of like solutions, I have to start looking for what is the most important problems. And so, like, Elon said that he pinpointed like 4 or 5 different problems, like really big problems, and he, base of his company. And for me, I felt like it was my mission in life that now I'm here in Little Saigon, that I'll be the bridge between the largest Vietnamese community in the world and the second largest community in the world. And so I felt the easiest way to bring people together was food and shelter. And I said that in the very beginning of the keynote. Those are the two biggest problems that if I know that, if I can build more houses or more commercial areas, or if I focus on supplying food and beverage, that was some sort of connection and a solution to bring people together. And so being an artist myself, obviously, like I've been an artist all my life. And I think that's also this part of the second part, which is important, that I think more artists or designer should be CEOs, because they think of the world, they look at the world very differently. They look at the world in the UI UX kind of feel, right? And then you have the products guys, where a lot of people that doing business in like an F&B industry, they focus a lot on the product. So they're product guys. So think of them like engineers. So there's a lot of engineer, a lot of that in the CEO world, but not a lot of philosophers, philosophy, historians, artists, on the social side of things, be more CEOs. And it makes absolutely no sense to me that, when you go to school, if you get a BA degree or BS degree, right, Bachelor of Science, a lot more Bachelor of Science are actually CEOs, which is, obviously structures and, you engineering your company. But if you get a business degree, it's not a BS degree. It's a BA degree. It's a Bachelor of Arts. And they categorize it because deep down, everyone knows business is an art. It's never a science. And so I'm very surprised at like how many other artists out there is also CEOs. I mean, if there's some other artist CEO out there, I would like to meet them. But I think that really gives me the overview of everything. Obviously, the first part of like how I grew up, and the second part of like now that I have this knowledge, I have to pick one, and I pick food first, using a lens of an artist in a sense, where I focus more on the user experience and user interface, and I call it human interface and human experience.
I want to return back to this question about you saying that you regret not finishing college and you think that it would have been better. I don't know. I think I disagree with that, and simply because um I think at the end of the day, what really plays a big key, and you mentioned it, is luck is first. That's first and foremost.
Yeah.
Luck is luck. Every single step of the game will change things for you that you look back and you go, that had everything to do with luck. But luck is everything. And then the other thing that I think really beats, I mean, luck is first. And then the second biggest thing, bigger than education, is ambition, this natural drive. Because then I have to ask you now, what do you think is driving you? So, luck is one thing that is the most needed thing, but luck to me is a must necessary. But ambition, if you don't have that, it doesn't matter how much education you have.
Yeah. And that goes back to the question of why, right? And the ultimate question of why, and I keep mentioning it, is why do I exist? Like, what is the meaning of my being? And so I, I still have that question every, practically every day, practically every day. And I ask myself the same question. And so I think that was the only thing that really got me out of bed. Because, why do you even get out of bed, in the morning? Obviously, obviously making money, paying bills and all that. But that's the mundane thing that everybody's doing. But for me, it was more about getting out of bed to figure out why do I exist. Um, and along the way, obviously, I have a lot of different answers along the way, but it's all boiled down to one thing. And that also in my keynote. And that was the very first thing I talked about. What do I want to be when I grow up? And the answer is, I don't know exactly, but I want to be useful. I just want to be a useful human being. So if I'm not adding to humanity, I feel like, why do I exist? It's, I can't just subtract from it, like we can't just take it away. How do I add? And my upbringing really kind of like shaped that a lot too, where actually my dad's side is very privileged. I was very privileged kid on my dad's side. But it's interestingly enough, I spent also one more day. So I have 2 weekend days, right? So obviously Saturday and Sunday. One day I would spend it at my dad's side. One day I would spend it at my mom's side. Drastically different.
Wow.
My dad's side was very privileged. I actually had a chauffeur and just kind of like chauffeur me around in the car. At that time was everyone is not, it's crazy. But the moment that they dropped me off at my grandma's house is a project,
Hmm.
a government project. The only bed that I knew of at that time was the floor. So the whole entire, my uh, grandpa's side on my mom's side, it didn't even have a bed. We literally just lay on the floor and just slept together in
And
that
so
one
you got
little.
to see both of these worlds at
I
one
see
time.
both.
Wow.
I saw both, and I saw both every single week, and it just really changed my perspective of like, wow, like life is really different, from one end to another end. Um, and so, and that's why the question of me asking my dad, like, why are we so privileged and other people is
Yeah.
not? Because it always kind of come up. And I think that was my main mission in life was, and one thing that my dad said too, there's a lot of governments, there's a lot of different system that in order for them to level the playing field, instead of bringing everyone from the bottom up, they bring the top down, just so that everyone's kind of like on the same level. Um, but so I made my mission in life was to bring every bottom up. And so that was my why. Why I left the country. I felt like that was my bottleneck. I could not grow anymore in that country. So by like 16 years old, I was applying to all these different countries, and didn't matter who called me. I applied to Australia, England, America. America happened to call me first, so I just applied and I just went. And when I came here, it really completely changed my perception of life. Where over here, as long as you work hard, as long as you know, put your head down and really going at it, there's really no stopping you. There's no physical barrier, or there's no emotional barrier. You can just keep going, right? Um, and that really left a strong impression on me. Where what if I can create an organization to amplify it, and not just for everybody in a sense where, but yes, for everybody, but strongly focused on the Vietnamese community, on the AAPI community, where we less serve, obviously, we less privilege, right? And create a system where right now, I literally can tell you right now, anybody listen to this podcast, if you come up to me, no experience, right out of school, and you say, knock on the door, I'm going to work for you. I'm going to spend every waking minute to make your company better, to make my life better, to make the community better. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes, day in, day out. I would hire them and pay them a much better wage than someone with 10, 20 years experience. Because essentially, that's what the American dream is all about, right? So you just work hard, you keep going at it. And if you look at all of our organization too, most of our staff is built from the ground up. And that's one of the biggest reasons why that we pay a lot higher than most restaurant group. A lot of our managers get paid a lot higher. Even now, I would say the middle management and lower employee level all getting paid a lot higher than most people is because of that reason. And go back to asking the why, right? And I felt, if I can just bring people from the bottom up a lot faster, then we don't have to worry about who's getting really rich up here. They can stay rich, whatever they want, but how fast we can elevate everybody from the bottom up. And that's the why.
Yeah, and all of this goes back to these one simple question I question all the time because we have kids around the same age. What we were able to see, what you were able to see with your dad's side, your mom's side, the disparity, the difference in the economics, and then what I was able to witness going back to Vietnam all these years, and as a child living through certain pockets of poverty, we got to witness that, and we got to I think it cranked up our ambition and our drive. But when we think about our kids, they're going to be in a much higher privilege class than we are. Does that ever bother you?
It does not actually. And let me explain. And I have a very different view about this too. So how, so, I mean, there's two camps. If you're a millionaire or multimillionaire, you're like, oh man, my kid is really privileged and they're gonna, and there's just another camp where I'm not gonna give them anything.
Yeah.
No. I'm just gonna not even money, not, they're flying coach.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
This is how I think. Throughout our human history, let's just say the most famous example of it all, Buddha. He was privileged. He was a prince. He grew up a prince. How many historical figure that we can name right now was either royalty or prince and really sacrifice everything and elevate everyone else? And obviously I keep naming it, but Buddha was one of them, right? We can argue the fact that if the higher figure, or is he a real god, or that doesn't matter. Historical fact, he was a person very privileged and went out there, sacrificed everything, and uplift everybody else. And throughout human history, that happened multiple times.
But there also is probably an overwhelming majority of Kong Hu, right? As a result
Exactly.
of rich families. So how do you ensure that our children are how do we do this? How do we think and cultivate this idea of, Buddha coming from a higher class and uplifting the lower class and making sure that there is enough for everybody? I think that's a beautiful story that I've never really thought about.
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, going back to that point where a lot of, obviously naughty kids and taking for granted. Let me give you another example as well. Whereas I think education is the number one key. Our founding fathers, the one who created this country, did we really think this whole entire country existed and being fought because of all of the lower class really got together and started revolutions? That wasn't the case. The founding father was all multi-millionaires.
Yeah.
And they put their life at risk, their livelihood at risk, fighting for something that they believed in. And most of them are highly educated. So I think if we really think about it that way, then it kind of changed our perception a little bit
Yeah.
about, yes, being born in a privileged family might break you, but with the right education, not just at school, but I think school education is important, but what really important is homeschooling.
Yeah.
The parents, how you talk to them, how you accustom to them to understand the world in a way that is, I would say, more useful for human beings. And if they found a way to be a lot more useful for humanity, I think they can make a much better impact than anyone else. And so that's my school of thoughts, where yes, understanding, like, just say your kid, my kid here are going to grow up very privileged. Our job is to make sure that they contribute to humanity. And so if they are somewhere else or doing other things, I really think it's our responsibility. And so I'll take full responsibility for how Kira are going to turn out. If, she grows up and not contributing to humanity, I have failed, not her, in a sense.
Yeah.
So that's my school of thought.
It's a great answer. Now, this idea of cultures like the Japanese and the Germans, they have these drills. They just go and they grind and they just really hundreds of years. I really love talking about this stuff because
the Germans and Japanese.
And before we got on the call, you had spoken about going back to Japan a few times for R&D.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, as anybody who's been to Japan, you can visit these factories and these businesses that have been around for hundreds of years, and you can see the cultural traditions of the Japanese loving and valuing the work process. And I feel like, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Vietnamese tradition, we are quicker at making money, but less about the process. So I used to have this problem with my dad. He was more like the Japanese, and I hated that about him. He would get things done at the cost of losing money, but the work that he did always beautiful and high quality. And I said to him all the time, I said, Dad, we only need 90% because the client can't see your 110% effort. They can only see 90. They can only detect 90. And that last 10, 20% that you're putting effort in, we're losing money because of that.
Yeah.
His whole life, he was working that way. And I hated the whole long process of the way he would work as like a Japanese person. But now as I get older, I am questioning why I even had those thoughts. And a lot of it does reflect, I think, in the way that, I've seen business being conducted in the Vietnamese community.
Yes, that is true. So, well, we have the same experience in a sense. I don't know. We're now that we're talking, it's just we're so similar in so many different ways. And my dad's the same thing.
Oh, wow.
Growing up. So he's the kind of guy who, if all of the employees could eat and the company is suffering for many months, he would choose that route rather than making money. Like, it's just how he is as a person. I obviously, growing up, I didn't understand it at first, but I always asked him why, right? And then he, I remember this very vividly. One night, we were shipping up tons of containers out to the US. We were doing a lot of stuff for Sears and JCPenney's and all that stuff. But shipping like clothing. So I always wanted to spend more time with him because he's never home. So, hey, Dad, can I come? And so he would drag me to the factory, and I slept on the factory floor, and on the couch. And sometimes I caught a glimpse, very small, but it stuck with me forever. Was that was probably like 1 or 2 a.m. at night. Every single one in the company was on like overdrive, because we have to load this container up. If not, we're not going to make time, and we have to pay all the fees. So he didn't have to be there. Everybody was working, but he was there. And so when I was laying down and I saw it, like he didn't sleep at all. And I was like, hey, why don't you go to sleep? And he didn't say anything. And all he was doing is stand right by the window. So I was laying down like this, and I remember this vividly. And he was staying right by the window, looking down to the factory floor because people were loading up stuff. And on his hand, he was just doing this. And I don't know why he was doing that, but he was, in a sense, nervous and extremely concerned. And I was thinking that he was concerning about, like how people would be like up and down and, checking the stock and everything. And I remember that phone call. So he called somebody, I don't know, why are the food not here yet?
Oh, wow.
So he wasn't asking like, are we loading it up on time? Is it, why are the food not here yet? Because he knew everyone was working overdrive. And he knew that was something that, they probably didn't eat in time. And so that really stuck with me, like for the longest time. And everything that he does, when I asked him, like, why are you going the extra mile to do certain like little things? And he said this: the customer might not see it, but we do. We saw all the effort, and that helped us make us sleep at night. And so I think your dad was the same camp, right? And obviously when I came here, one other person that I always listened to, and I always, following his lead, was Steve Jobs. And at a very young age too, he was, helping his dad painting the fence
Yeah,
in
I
front.
remember that story.
You remember that
Story.
story?
Great story. Yeah, tell it.
And then the dad was like, well, now that you paint the front, that looks really nice to the neighbors, let's paint the back of the fence. I'm like, but no one's going to see it. And he looked over and he said to Steve, but we do. Make it beautiful inside out. And that stuck with him over the years. So if you break up any computer, Apple computer, it's not just beautiful outside. The inside is a work of art.
Hmm.
His next computer, everything else, everything that he does is beautiful outside in. And I thought that was important. And so we took that philosophy with everything we do. So I don't care how much thing that is going on in the front and customer can see it, but in the back, even with just a script, a message, a memo to our employee, which customer would never see, or a party for our staff, or an event for our staff, or whatever it is that in the back end, make it the most memorable, most beautiful, because we do see it.
Yeah. And that's an important message because I think in order for these cultures like the Japanese to really dongdai, to really continue to persevere and to showcase the quality of the product that they do, you have to have that mindset that we're making it
Yeah,
for us.
for us.
For us.
You live with it. Yeah, for us. You put it out there knowing that you did every single humanly possible ways to make it the best product you could. And you
yeah,
can charge for it.
absolutely. Now that
You can charge for it.
that brings me to the last question, the last topic that I really want to get into is somehow you've actually brought the optics, the way we look at perhaps Vietnamese food, whether it's at Gem or at or Nep, we can see it. A chef recently told me, Vietnamese chef that I respect a lot. He came back from Nep and he said that's the best Vietnamese restaurant we have.
Oh,
And I
thank you.
respect what he says a lot, Chef Nguyen Bui. And he said that, and I said I understand because I was telling him that we've talked a few times, and you're visionary, and you understand what you just said about the pricing of things. Now, when you really analyze pho or ramen, ramen
Yeah.
is much more expensive than pho, and if you
Mm.
really analyze it, there should be no reason for that. Do you
Yes.
see a time where Vietnamese cuisine will get its sort of day in the sun, which is the pricing will reflect the true value of our food as it relates to other cuisines in the world?
We are here now. We are absolutely here now. To be honest with you, when was the last time that you went to a pho restaurant lately and you pay less than $10?
Right.
Nowhere anymore.
Nowhere.
Nowhere anymore, right?
No.
So we are here now, which is an amazing thing to see. Now, we call it, I would say, we can call it eureka moment. You can call it, revelations. You can call it evolutions. But in the end of the day, at the end of the day, I think people start to, like I said, the Gen Zs and the newer generations, they now start to know that, hey, as long as we can put out really high quality product, regardless of what it is, we can charge. So the Vietnamese population probably didn't try to do that first with pho restaurant, but because all of these, Vietnamese restaurant that is not charging too much, so they could not afford the wave of talent of Vietnamese people. So what do they do? Where do they go? They go to New York, Chicago, San Francisco, all over the world, and doing other cuisines. And I'm pretty sure they have exactly the same question. Like, it costs way more than ramen, a lot more work.
Mhm.
Why are we charging less? And I'm pretty sure because all of that questions start popping up and down. And that's when they come back here. And we're very happy to one of the first few to like really push Little Saigon to the edge and now create this economy where, hey, you can charge people if you have beautiful ambience,
Ambience. Yeah.
if you have really good service, if you have good food and quality food, you can charge. And they see how Gem was charging people, how Vox was charging people, how Nape was charging people. Now they embolden to, hey, we can charge too, as long as the quality is there. So I'm proud of that fact that we're one of the first few, but we're definitely here now. I mean, most places that I know that is Vietnamese cuisine nowadays, you gotta pay to play. You gotta come in and be ready to pay exactly as any other restaurant. In the world. There's another restaurant that I just found out. It's called Gao Viet Kitchen in San Francisco.
Mm.
Um, Very not expensive, but they charge the right price. They charge the right price. And I'm very happy for him. He's like now almost have like 500,000 follower on his Instagram or something like
Wow.
that.
Wow.
It's
I'm glad to hear
amazing to
that.
see. Yeah, super, super successful. I think he has two locations now. Met him once in passing, but very close friend with Calvin Boy. I don't know if you know
Yep.
Calvin from
Sure.
Breaking the Deliciousness. And so yeah, so I mean, people like that. Or the first Vietnamese restaurant that got a Michelin star in LA, which is Phenicite.
Yeah. Min.
I mean, you go there, you pay, with high quality food, stuff like that. And then a dear friend of ours, um, um, I I don't know how to pronounce this restaurant. I completely forgot how we say it, but he's in Orlando. Um, and it's also tasting menu. I'll send you after. It's beautiful the way that he does it. Almost kind of like Somni like to me. And it's beautiful. And obviously he charges. So we are absolutely here now, and I'm super happy for it.
What a pleasant answer that was, because this is the first time. I mean, this is the first time I've heard anybody say, we are here now. We are here.
We are here now.
Prices are going to be here. And years ago, people would be like, oh, that's too much for Vietnamese food. Our people would say that. But now it's like, no, it's not. We should be, our restaurant businesses should be making the same amount as it relates to an Italian restaurant or Japanese or whatever.
Yes, because remember, the margin is extremely thin.
Yeah.
So we don't charge that much. We can't take care of our staff. That's a problem, right? The industry is so broken to a point where like we can't even pay our staff properly. So knowing this, that you come in and you pay the same amount as any Italian restaurant or Japanese restaurant or German restaurant or American restaurant, yes, you are help make this industry a lot better, and you preserving history, you preserving this whole entire economy. And so ask yourself this: 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, do you still want to eat at the same establishment as you're eating now? If you do, please pay the right price. I mean, everybody should pay a little bit more and eating more quality food and help fix the whole entire industry on its own. Our margin is extremely thin, a few percent.
Yeah.
Almost break even at most months. Some months we're going a little bit under. And so that's the whole point. The whole point is we really want to take care of our staff, and it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
Viet, thank you so much. You've illuminated a lot of these topics, and you've done it in a way that's not businessy. You've done it in a way that's very philosophical. And I think getting to the heart of these matters in a philosopher's way is the way to do it, because we can relate and empathize with the journey. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Viet. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much. And, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to be on your podcast.
Likewise. Thank you, Viet.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. Special thanks to Brittany Tran, to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast.